What's up, y'all? Welcome to Convo Blueprint. Back with another episode. I always start without making sure my audio's right, and it looks like it is right. So I saw Fox News talk about something about Biden's. They have a video here called "Report Biden's Woke Military Struggling to Recruit," and yeah, I noticed that it's interesting to me, like how people talk about the military who have never been in the military, but Fox News is really good at doing a particular thing called straw man fallacy. So before we watch the clips, I have like a little short thing from an online source, Excelsior College, that breaks down and gives an example of straw man fallacy. So yeah, let's go to that. I've been working on a little commercial for y'all, but I don't have it together yet. So let's go have a look at this. Let me go on and share my screen. Because I do think it's interesting that, they're saying because the military is woke, that, that's why the military is not meeting its accession goals. I do find that very, very interesting. So here we go. First, before we go into the video from Fox News about the military being woke and that's why they're not meeting accession goals, let's go here. So, straw man fallacy from Excelsior Online Writing Lab. All right. A straw man fallacy occurs when someone takes another person's argument or point, distorts it or exaggerates it in some kind of extreme way, and then attacks the extreme distortion as if that is really the claim the first person is making. Fox News, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, The Five, all of these people are masterminds at straw man fallacy. Person one, I think pollution from humans contributes to climate change. Person two, so you think humans are directly responsible for extreme weather like hurricanes and have caused droughts in the southwestern United States. You see how that works? All right, so here's a little comic. The comic below gives you a little insight into what this fallacy might look like. Join Captain Logic as he works to thwart the evil fallacies of Dr. Fallacy. Pollutions from humans contribute to climate change because, look, so you think humans are directly responsible for extreme weather like hurricanes and have caused droughts in the southwest United States. You see? Dr. Fallacy. Funny, it's an owl. Swoosh! Dr. Fallacy, you're busted. You can't distort this man's argument like that. That's a straw man fallacy. Drat! Foiled again by logic. But this will not be my final fantasy. Ha ha. In this example, you'll notice how Dr. Fallacy completely distorted the speaker's point. While this is an extreme example, it's important to be careful not to fall into this kind of fallacy on a smaller scale because it's quite easy to do. Think about the times you may have even accidentally misrepresented the other side in an argument. We have to be careful to avoid even the accidental straw man fallacy. So it's easy to fall into these fallacies, right? So let's go over here to the Fox News segment. Now that we've educated ourselves on what a fallacy is. Here we go.
With both a record low percentage of young Americans eligible to serve and an even tinier fraction willing to consider it. Joining me now is Stu Scheller, a Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel discharged after criticizing the military's Afghanistan withdrawal.
Hold on, what's this? Okay, there we go.
He's also the author of Crisis of Command. Stuart, this really is the chickens coming home to roost moment. I think you predicted it. I predicted it. They want the military to be like, I don't know, Harvard Law School, like a Thursday night seminar where it's no really different from any college campus.
Yes, Laura,
what is she talking about?
Bottom line, you alluded to it. This is not a recruitment problem. This is a problem with our senior leaders. Our senior leaders' inability to have a courage, their hypocrisy, it's affecting all other things. You would think a young American would want to raise their right hand, support and defend the Constitution, similar to your last guest talking about wanting to support and defend the Constitution, and have trust in our senior military leaders. But our senior military leaders have demonstrated through action that we can't trust them. And you would be naive to think that a young American isn't getting online.
So a little bit of history about this lieutenant colonel. From what I remember, he was in the Marines and he was a commander. And basically, due to President Biden's administration pulling out of Afghanistan the way it did, he spoke up about it. And then he was basically kicked out of the Marines. So that's why Fox News had him on here. And now they're trying to create the straw man fallacy that by the military being woke, that's the reason why they're not meeting their accessions goals. But there's an article from Fox News that has another gentleman on there, I think, who's in the active duty, who said that, he gave other reasons, which we'll go into later.
And going on the internet and seeing all the missteps that we can clearly see of our senior military leaders.
I was lucky enough to be at the Michael Murphy Navy SEAL Museum opening out Long Island today, and I had a chance to meet so many incredible men and women in uniform and former SEALs and so forth, and looking at the wall of all these special operators who gave their lives for this country. And I actually got angry. I got angry about what's happening to this military and all their sacrifice, and the families who are still sacrificing to this day. We owe them a lot, and a lot better than this.
Also notice how she says, I got angry at what's happening to this military, but she didn't angry about what, and what is happening to the military, right? Let's see if she says what is she angry about?
Yeah, I actually just spent some time down in Texas with Morgan and Marcus Luttrell. I saw some pictures of Marcus Luttrell at the museum, and I was talking to Marcus, and he was talking about our generation, born in the 70s and 80s, that has been forged in fire through combat, where our senior leaders have made consistent mistakes. But I think it's our time to step up and get us back on track to a constitutional mindset. We need leadership. We need courage. I think that's what the 22 election cycle is going to be about. That's what I'm dedicated to. And I think our senior leaders need to wake up to the real problems right now.
Yeah, we're going to need a new commander in chief for that, I think. Here's something else affecting recruitment and retention. Since the military's...
So they, just like politicians didn't state anything that's happening to the military, as far as now we're about to connect the straw man fallacy to why the military is not meeting its accessions. But they spoke like politicians in a sense, like they just said you need to vote a certain way for what's happening to the military, but they didn't say what's actually happening to the military. And they brought somebody who was in the military on. Wow.
COVID-19 vax mandate, over 5,000 military members were discharged for refusing to comply. Stuart, most of these people are in good health. A lot of them have already had COVID. How do we expect the military to meet their quotas when we're kicking out perfectly healthy men and women?
Yeah, Laura, I'll tell you firsthand that those numbers are much larger, especially if you start going in the National Guard or the reserves. You start getting into the 40 to 100,000. There's still a bunch of medical waivers that are making it hard for them to discharge. But the problem is much bigger than the 5,000 that you described. And it even is exacerbated by people coming in. Right now, we have a senator candidate in New Hampshire, Don Bolduc, a former one-star general. His kids went through ROTC and were told right at the end that they couldn't join because they weren't going to get vaccinated. And then they were told that they had to pay back the ROTC scholarship. All of these service members that have served for 2 decades in war, they made an individual medical choice not to get vaccinated. I don't care what your opinion is, but for you to say that they don't deserve an honorable discharge on the way out the door is criminal. And it's indicative of our lack of courage and hypocrisy.
Okay, I agree with that. I think if somebody doesn't want to get a vaccination, that is experimental. This is just my personal opinion. I'm not speaking for the military or anything else like that. I think that, you should get an honorable discharge. And you shouldn't have to pay anything back. That's bananas. Yeah. So, but notice how the tagline was talking about being woke in the military, and not once, right? So they equate being woke with something negative, but not once did they say anything about being woke. This is the straw man fallacy.
Our senior military leadership.
Now, again, the message comes from the top, and Republicans are the ones who help fund all of this. So the Republicans have to, at some point, Lieutenant Colonel Scheller, they have to say no more. Not a dime is going to go to this diversity, equity, inclusion nonsense, and then follow through on it. And
so once again, this is talking about being woke. They act like the military is not meeting its sessions because of the woke military, and they blame people wanting to get out due to not getting the vaccine to diversity, equity, and inclusion, things that the military has always strived to be about, and like for a long time now, at least. You know what I mean? There's regulations, the Army, the military, the DOD has the Equal Opportunity Program. So are they saying that needs to go away too? The DOD's Equal Opportunity Program is for military and civilians, and it's to create spaces which are free from discrimination and harassment and age discrimination and religious and all these other things. Basically, the same freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. So how is woke connected to the military not meeting its accession goals?
they just have to. We appreciate you. We appreciate you and your book.
Laura.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to
See,
Fox
that
News YouTube
interview was just really about nothingness. Okay. Now, let's go over here. So we already talked about the straw man fallacy, so I'll close that. One of the reasons why I think the military might not be meeting their accessions. Hold on, let's go. Let's go here. I think the military is not meeting its accessions because we just came out of a pandemic. There's a number of reasons why the military is not meeting its accessions. I also think one of the reasons why is because a lot of people aren't qualified medically, right? So what's interesting is that's what they put on the Laura Ingraham show. But I'm about to show you an article. And in this article, they say a whole lot of different things and give context. They don't talk about being woke in this article. And in this article, they mention some things. So I'll give credit to where credit is due. So let's go here. Military recruitment lags despite reduced targets, record incentives to boost interest. So they fell short, all the branches. Since the pandemic started. You see where I'm going with this? So it don't have nothing to do with being woke or anything to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion, or it might, but not in the way that they said. Not in my experience, not in my belief. Okay, so let's read some of this article. One more back. So the military touts a recruits market that should attract fresh blood into its ranks as each branch faces recruiting shortfalls following the coronavirus pandemic. In real estate, you talk about buyers and sellers markets. Major General Edward W. Thomas, Jr., commander of the Air Force Recruiting Service, told Fox News Digital, right? So they have someone higher ranking than the person who was on the Laura Ingraham show, who's no longer in the military. And this is a person who's in Air Force recruiting. You know, this is a recruiting market right now. There are good opportunities to serve and good incentives to do so. The military faced a drop-off in recruitment during the pandemic. Each branch met active component goals, but reserve numbers have fallen short each year. That shortage has now hit the active component goals for the Army and Navy, with other branches just meeting their goals. One significant factor that Thomas highlighted is the lack of engagement the military could pursue while schools remained remote in 2020 during nationwide lockdowns. Okay, makes sense. A 2018 report by the Institute for Defense Analyses heavily focused on recruitment at the high school level, indicating the high value placed on that pipeline. Okay. Really, in the long term, it's declining eligibility, declining propensity or interest in serving, and declining trust in government, Thomas said. Nothing about being woke. Today, 77% of American youth aged 17 to 24 will not qualify to serve in the United States. Military without a waiver, 77%, he continued. That's based on a variety of different reasons, from weight to medical issues to academic issues to behavior issues, mental health issues. It's a wide variety, with 77% don't qualify without a waiver. If you notice, just recently, the Army said you can have tattoos on the neck now, and you don't have to have a high school diploma or a GED to join, but you do have to score at least a 35 on the ASVAB, I think it was. So, and Thomas admitted that the perception around the military withdrawal from Afghanistan may have impacted recruitment in the last 6 months, but stressed that he would not consider it one of the primary drivers. The drop-off forced the military to reduce their goals, which they were able to do so thanks to higher than usual retention. Y'all be nice. Be nice, kids. That's Paul and Fred right there. Back in 2020 and 21, we did reduce our recruiting goals slightly because retention was high, Thomas said. We have not seen that in wanting to. Fred, be nice. What we saw when COVID hit, we had a record high retention in the Air Force, and I believe across the body. Thomas explained, frankly, it just wasn't a great time to transition out into the civil sector to be looking for a good job. That makes sense. With all the uncertainty, both in the market and people's personal lives with COVID, retention was high. Thomas argued that the job market. Paul, okay. You stepping on the keyboard, Paul. Thomas argued the job market continues to play a major factor in the recruitment equation. With the nation facing its highest level of employment in 50 years, the military faces fierce competition with the general job market. The rate of unemployment spiked early in the pandemic, but has since then returned to around 3.5%. It's good for the nation in general, he said. It makes the battle for talent all that much more ferocious. And it continues to go on. So I'll continue to read because maybe some people are interested in joining the military and they want this information. To try and compete with that healthy market, the military has offered larger than usual bonuses, including up to $50,000 for certain fields, such as special warfare. Other fields for hard to fill jobs have incentives ranging from $3,000 to $6,000. The main goal is to keep trying to attract the best of the best, including varsity athletes, candidates with multiple language proficiency, or candidates with expertise in niche fields, including crypto. Interesting. Part of the problem may be due to the lack of understanding when it comes to the kinds of roles available in the military. In just the Air Force alone, Thomas noted that there are about 130 enlisted career fields. Almost anything you can do it in a major city, maybe other than being a stockbroker, or a few select jobs that you can pretty much do in the Air Force, he explained. So all of the peripherals that we recruit for, we're recruiting for medical, for radiology technicians, for dental technicians, you name it. Now let's get to the reasons why I think that also the military might be facing difficulty meeting its accessions. This is reported from the Military Times. It says this report says Black and Hispanic service members are more likely to face trial. This is from 2019. In the same time period where they're talking about having, a difficult time to meet accessions. When it comes to the combat support MOSs, the things that support the warfighting functions like human resources or supply, a lot of those personnel are, non-European, well, non-white. They're Black and Hispanic. So I'll just read. So men in the military are much likely to go to court-martial than women, according to recently compiled data, and Black or Hispanic service members of either gender are more likely to face a trial than their white counterparts. However, once service members get to trial, the likelihood of a conviction is nearly the same across all demographic backgrounds. So what is that? That presents the appearance that there's some racial preference. But once a commander, a judge advocate says, hey, this needs to go to a trial, a commander has already made the decision. Therefore, the outcome is most likely the same because a commander has, said so. Those are the key findings of a Government Accountability Office study released Thursday. But the GAO acknowledges the report, spurred by lawmakers concerned by racial inequity in the military justice system, does not have enough information to reach any major conclusions about the data. So when Fox News was talking about being woke and diversity, equity, and inclusion, the diversity, equity, and inclusion data the program would give the Department of Defense the ideas to make conclusions about this data. Throughout the services, according to the report, men were as much as 6 times more likely to face a trial, while Black service members were about twice as likely to have their charges referred, and Hispanic troops were about 1.5 times as likely. But overall, the report found the inconsistent ways in which the services report and track gender, race, and ethnicity make it difficult to mine the data available for these disparities. One example the report found is the large number of potential responses for race and ethnicity across the military services databases. There are between 5 to 32 options for race and 2 to 25 options for ethnicity, which can complicate cross-service assessments, the report found. I don't know if I agree with that necessarily, even though, I'm not just giving my personal opinion. I think you go with the information that the person, every military service has documents where someone chooses one of these options. So I don't think the data would be that hard to identify. That's just my opinion. Likelihood that service members were subjects of record investigations and tried in general and special courts martials from 2013 to 2017. Okay, so we see that information there. The Army had a lot more. So this shows the disparities, okay? The study mandated by Congress in the 2018 National Defense Authorization Act looked at data from 2013 to 2017, including 258,000 cases of discipline under the Uniform Code of Military Justice in the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. What they found after controlling for race, gender, rank, education, and because the Air Force tracks it, airmen's years in service, was that overall men are between 2 and 6 times more likely to see a court-martial after they've been investigated than women. The high end is in the Army, followed by about 4.5 times in Navy, 3 times in the Navy, and just over 2 times in the Marine Corps. Black service members of either gender were about twice as likely to see court-martial in the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps, and close to 1.5 times in the Air Force. For Hispanic troops, it was about 1.5 times across the services. I would like to point out as well that not just the military times, the Army times. They reported multiple times that punishment for non-white soldiers, non-white military members is much more severe in other articles, and you could do a quick Google search and find that too. However, according to the data, once at general or special court-martial, there was no statistical significance in the outcome. Members of all races and ethnicities were convicted at similar rates. One thing that, okay, so when this is talking about the special courts martials and things like that, these are usually grievances that are pretty egregious for us to have a special court martial or general court martial. You know what I'm saying? I think the lieutenant colonel from the Marines was kicked out from a court martial, if I'm not mistaken. So if you do something that takes the appearance of the military down, or your character it's a huge violation on it, then this is when we come to a general or special court martial. So generally speaking, the outcome is going to be the same due to the nature of the crime. How about we just say that? Beyond those findings, what the GAO report concluded is that the services will have to do a better job tracking these statistics before anyone can determine whether there are demographic disparities in the military's criminal justice system. I disagree. I think, yes, do a better job, but I disagree that we don't have enough data already, because everyone has, their race identified on their records. In 2017, service members advocacy organization Protect Our Defenders published its own report, concluding that Black troops were having drastically different outcomes under UCMJ, per data obtained by the Freedom of Information Act request. And that's what I agree with as well, because just like I said earlier, the GAO's findings support some of those claims, but their 11 recommendations take aim at the data collection itself. They include that the Army, Navy, and Air Force departments should record ethnicity and race data in investigations and personnel databases using the same categories as military justice databases. I believe we already do that. The Coast Guard, have y'all noticed there's like multiple typos? The Coast Guard should modify its military justice database to be searchable by gender, as well as include race and ethnicity data. It's like, why aren't you already doing that? What I do know, I can say, is that the personnel database, every service has one, and race is identified on your records. That the Defense Department's annual UCMJ review should consider an amendment to require gender, race, and ethnicity as part of its reporting requirements. See there, okay, that could be the big hiccup, because, but I wonder, is this on purpose? I mean, why would you not track it if you think that there's disparities that are being reported on? And how could a separate organization through the Freedom of Information Act be speaking and getting this information? Y'all see where I'm going? Sorry to make you dizzy by rolling up and down on the screen. Also, that both DOD and the Homeland Security Department should review cases and track disparities in gender, race, or ethnicity. I just yawned, sorry. That the Army, Navy, and Coast Guard should consider collecting complete demographic information for their non-judicial punishment reports. That's where I'm trying to get at too. So there are things that don't go to special court martial or general court martial that I'm sure that group was able to get through the Freedom of Information Act. Both DOD and DHS should do a joint evaluation to identify demographic disparities and address the causes. DOD fully concurred with all but 2 recommendations, only adding that DHS be looped in on any recommendations directed at all 5 services, and that any efforts be under the authority of those departments rather than any offices within them. DHS concurred across the board. So I did see some information today that they are, I think, doing a better job of tracking these things, which I think is good. And the trends go to show that people are feeling more comfortable to actually report. So back to some straw man fallacies. Let's watch this. This title is called "This is State-Sponsored Racism," and it has Matt Gaetz in it. Y'all know, like, why isn't Matt Gaetz in jail? Like, he's been under investigation, and he asked the president, former President Trump, for a pardon. Like, why isn't he in jail? Look, so for you all who don't know, look, why is he not in jail? I don't need. So this is from the Daily Beast. FBI records reveal Matt Gaetz was in chaos mode as scandal broke. So he went on Tucker Carlson and tried to get Tucker Carlson to co-sign his story, which he did not. And that was funny. That was a funny interview. So 15 minutes before Matt Gaetz was due on Tucker Carlson's Fox News show on March 30th, 2021, like, why is he not in jail? Hours after a bombshell report that he was under investigation for allegedly sex trafficking a minor, Gaetz was shouting repeatedly at FBI agents in his family home. "Do you have a warrant to be here?" Gaetz yelled, according to an FBI report of the event obtained by the Daily Beast. But as adversarial as Gaetz was in those moments, the agents were after him. They were actually there to help him and his father, who had been cooperating with the FBI for several days in a sting operation that Gaetz claimed on live TV minutes later would clear his name. This scene and others are detailed in previously unreported documents that shine new light on the new sting operation, which Gaetz helped orchestrate in the frenzied days before the New York Times published the explosive report that changed the Panhandle congressman's public and political profile. The documents in possession of federal prosecutors and obtained exclusively by the Daily Beast confirms parts of the story of the international intrigue and attempted fraud that Gaetz described to Carlson minutes after his agents left his home. But the records also contradict fundamental claims in Gaetz' version of events, raising new questions about the congressman's own role in the sting, as well as when and why he began to cooperate with the feds. One document contains a key but so far elusive detail about the origins of the ongoing federal sex trafficking investigation into Gaetz, when exactly it began. When Gaetz first recounted the story to Carlson, it was for an unprepared public still processing the news of the sex trafficking probe and a head-spinning chain of events. According to Gaetz, two men approached his father, Don Gaetz, the wealthy former president of the Florida Senate and a political power broker to this day, with a bizarre quid pro quo. If Don Gaetz would give them $25 million, they could make the investigation into his son's alleged sex crimes go away. Does that sound like somebody who's guilty? Like, why is this man not in jail? And why is he still a member of Congress? The stated motivation for the $25 million payment was perhaps even more bizarre. The men said they wanted to use the money to rescue Bob Levinson, an American taken hostage in Iran and long presumed dead. Our family was so troubled by that, we went to the local FBI, Gaetz told Carlson. But FBI records dispute that sequence of events. According to the documents, the FBI learned of the Levinson plot independently through lawyers of intermediaries. Agents only spoke to Matt Gaetz after reaching out to him through one of those intermediaries. Is this not enough? I feel like that's enough, right? Okay, that is enough. I mean, so then it goes into the timelines and stuff. But there was receipts. And he asked President Trump for a pardon. You generally don't ask for a pardon unless you're guilty of something. But I don't know why this dude's not in jail. But let's see what this video is and how it seems that Fox News does a lot of fear mongering, and they put woke in a segment in which they try to make it seem like diversity, equity, and inclusion is a problem. But Laura Ingraham mentioned it for 2 seconds at the end of her clip. There was no context to her mentioning being woke. So let's see what this is.
Ingram Angle has exclusively obtained leaked footage from a Department of Labor panel about transgenderism. Fox's own Matt Finn is in our West Coast newsroom with all of the alarming details. Matt.
Hi, Laura. The video was obtained by a congressional source and shows trans activists speaking at a Department of Labor webinar about how to provide safe and nurturing spaces for trans employees. One of the activists.
Okay, let me ask y'all, do you have a problem with that? I mean, these conversations, I think it's kind of crazy in 2022, these conversations need to be had. Like, human decency has gone out the window. You know what I mean? For far too many people. And a major problem that I see is that it's largely gone out the window for people who say they're Christian, or people who say they love God, or people who are bosses who are supposed to have a certain standard of character, whether they're in the military or civilian sector. People just feel like they should control what goes on in your house, and they judge you based on your beliefs. And to me, this is just crazy. So the fact that they have to have a conversation in 2022 about the golden rule is kind of insane to me. Diversity, equity, and inclusion exists in the military because it has to, because there's Army Command Policy, AR 600-20, that says how we should treat one another. But guess what? There are laws, but there are people who want to break laws.
With the pronouns she, her, and goddess, told attendees that some white men.
Now, I really don't understand the pronoun stuff. That's just me. If I don't have a problem using a particular pronoun for a particular person who has a preference for pronoun, I guess I just don't understand it, because I personally think it's giving someone else too much power over you. Like how people get upset if someone pronounces their name wrong or calls them the wrong pronoun. I'm like, this is just, I think there's a point at which decency is a two-way street. And if someone's trying and they mislabel you, they should be given grace.
Don't acknowledge trans identities and want to criminalize trans people.
Okay, let me go back a little bit.
Identities and want to criminalize her, and goddess told attendees that some white men don't acknowledge trans identities and want to criminalize trans people.
And I want to hear her say that, because Fox News be trying to start stuff and do straw man fallacies. And I want to hear her say that some white men, because I would argue there are a lot of people who have problems or issues with trans people, period.
People.
That's what we're dealing with, is like really reclaiming all those identities that have always existed, right? But because of colonization and those cis white men not understanding and being confused about what they saw.
Okay, so she said it. Now, the thing is, in the context of which she said it, she first said colonialism and colonization, and she talked about identities that already existed. I don't see a problem with the context of what she said.
Well, you're either male or female, that's it.
Another trans activist said that if insurance companies will not lower co-payments for gender reassignment surgeries, then she might go back to sex work to pay for it.
If I go get an elective surgery, a top or bottom surgery, and my co-payment is $4,000 and $5,000, $8,000, I might as well go pay for the surgery myself and back out here sex working if that's the case.
Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz sent a letter to the Labor Secretary Martin Walsh on Monday requesting more information about the webinar and asking Walsh to investigate, writing in part, "The conversation is entirely inappropriate and the claims made are without any merit. It is shocking that DOL employees are using their time at work to have an open-ended partisan forum consisting of abrasive social commentary."
Now, if you remember, so I also do a show called The Vibe-Litical Show. And remember when Matt Gaetz tried to corner General Milley, the Army Chief of Staff, or is he the Deputy Chief of Staff? Mark Milley. Let me. I want to get that right real quick. General Mark Milley. The 20th. He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Okay, there we go. So, so Matt Gaetz tried to corner him, and this is when he was trying to say, "Oh, the military's woke" and all this stuff, and he was trying to talk about. Let me see if I could just find that clip. This is when he made the comment about, "I want to understand white rage." Okay, I think I found it. Let me pull that over. He said, "I want to understand why." I won't speak for him. I'll just let him speak for himself.
On the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to. On the.
Okay, I'm not fast enough. Here we go.
Issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read.
Mm-hmm.
It is important that we train and we understand, and I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that?
Do you have a problem with anything that General Mark Milley just said?
I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers of being, quote, woke or something else because we're...
Yeah, so Matt Gaetz, there he is. Matt Gaetz was trying to press General Mark Milley and say that the military is woke and that the military is teaching critical race theory. I think I'm going to do another show on what critical race theory is because there's a lot of lies surrounding critical race theory. It's been around for decades, since 1960s, somewhere around there. And it's a theoretical framework that does not focus on groups of people, but rather institutions, policies, right? Agencies that disenfranchise certain groups of people. So Republicans, they would tell you it's brainwashing people. They would tell you, it's causing division and separation, and it's teaching little white kids that they're racist, and it tells all white people that they're racist. And I remember President Trump said that the DOD had training or something like that, in which he claimed that all white people were being told that they're racist. And as I was a previous equal opportunity advisor, in which you have to go to school for 3 months in order to do the job, so you can learn how to properly assist your commander in creating an environment free of harassment and discrimination. And I have never heard of any DOD training in which they told white people that they were racist and that black people and all the other people of color that would be in there, from the Native Americans and Hispanics, that they are the oppressed. And in the military, they are not teaching critical race theory, and the military is not woke. And the military is not trying to be woke, according to what the Republicans say. Now, if you say that being woke is diversity, equity, inclusion, then the military is woke, because it's about treating everyone with dignity and respect. Respect is one of the 7 Army values.
Studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws.
There were laws in the United States. that were racist, that were used to disenfranchise groups, laws perpetuated by the United States government.
Prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being.
3/5 clause. That's what he's talking about. Things that critical race theory would bring the theoretical framework and use it to answer the questions on how the economic power dynamics are the way they are. Like we have like a common sense thing. We have billions of dollars to send to Ukraine for war, but they still don't have clean water in Flint, Michigan.
When this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look it, I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets, but I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military.
Bam. I mean, he put that down because Matt Gaetz was trying to press him. And it was a bit much. But a person whose character is such, I don't understand how he's not in jail. But let's continue. So he has a problem with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I'm like, how do you have a problem with that when he had a live-in Cuban son? Google that.
We have reached out to the Labor Department for response, but so far have not heard back just yet. Laura.
Matt, thank you. And joining me now is the aforementioned Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who got his hands on this video. Congressman.
Just look at Matt Gaetz. I mean, don't he look like Beavis and Butthead? Like, y'all remember that cartoon? I'm showing my age.
Now, what does any of this have to do with furthering the mission of the department? What am I missing here?
Well,
so it sounds like by the way she posed that question, it's clear why the conversation was being had, so that people can foster and have the conversation, because obviously we still need to be having these conversations because people just can't get along with people who disagree with them or people from another religion. You know, I think there's only the human race. All this other stuff goes out the window. We got the same organs. If you're a man, you have these organs. If you're a woman, you have these organs. If you're trans, then you're changing your organs. But when it comes down to the dignity and respect piece, right? Like, I don't understand what the problem is. And I think if we were to go back, I bet they don't even understand why affirmative action was even a thing in the first place. But General Mark Milley just told you why affirmative action was a thing in the first place. These people don't even know American history. They've whitewashed it, but I'll let them continue.
Bizarre is that in the name of inclusion, our government is embracing the policies of exclusion. And it's really state-sponsored racism.
How? Excluding who? And how is it racism? Racism against who? I guess he's going to tell us.
For your money to be used by the Department of Labor to try to say that all of society's flaws are the fault of white men. So I believe we have to expose these things.
Nothing that she said in context was a problem. She said colonialism and colonization. Did that not happen? Did those actions of American history and world history not produce racial animosity, which produced racial laws, which produced the reason why critical race theory is even a thing, and the reason why in 2022 we're still talking about treating people with dignity and respect? And the biggest piece, maybe I would have said it another way than what she did, but I think the biggest piece is another way of saying that people don't have dignity and respect is I don't understand how people don't have empathy for another human. Most people have somebody that they love or loves them. Some people are fathers, some people are mothers, brothers, sisters. You know, you have friends that you love. How do people decide who's worthy of that empathy and who's not worthy of that empathy? Based on what as well? which ties back. I didn't start with my scripture today, but I did have my meditation, and I'll read it before I get offline. And it was Psalm 1. And I'll go back to it. But I just think too that you just can't be a person who has a creator, who believes in a higher power, and still be racist or prejudiced or separatist or agree with the ideology of have and have nots.
Things when they happen. I believe when we retake the House, we have to actually use the power of the purse to stop this. And then when we retake the White House, we have to reorient these agents.
Stop what though? Like, what is he like? Republicans, conservatives are great at whipping up emotion, but without any substance whatsoever. The fact that she told the truth about American history, colonialism, and colonization, like, stop what? And it was at the Department of Labor. It was somebody testifying. This won't know, or somebody speaking. This wasn't, to my knowledge, this was comments from not the person actually giving the training, but someone attending the training. People can say what they want within the training, and the person who's giving the training can, bring it back. Say, hey, dial that back, or hey, that's not something that we need to discuss because of respect and dignity. But I don't get what the problem is here.
Where they actually work for people's freedoms. I mean, if the Department of Labor is going to be focused on pronouns instead of the freedom of people to actually work in our country, why even have a Department of Labor?
Well, good. I think that's a great question. That's
the freedom to, like, you see the straw man fallacy again. What the ladies who were speaking about, they were speaking about trans people in the workplace and obviously discrimination or prejudices that they believe they faced. So is he only saying that some Americans should have the freedom to work? I don't know, because I don't want to get into straw man fallacy against what he's saying, but I will say he's not providing any context.
That's what we should do, is get rid of the whole department. Now I want to play another clip from
get rid of the whole department. Why? Because they're advocating for all workers.
This panel.
For a long time, I had this trans identity, right, that did not allow me to center my femininity. And I often walk that line of looking androgynous. Now I have allowed myself to go completely into what I like to call my goddess mode. I'm both male and female. I am just energy. I am energy.
And what's wrong with that? Do you, boo? Be you, boo? Let's see what they have to say about that clip.
Congressman, again, the purpose of the Labor Department. I mean, I shouldn't laugh. This is actually serious. And someone's paying for this somewhere along the line. I imagine maybe they do this for free around the country, but I doubt it, because a lot of these people get paid big money to be consultants in this arena. Speaking of the goddesses and centering femininity and all these important Labor Department topics for birthing people.
I'm going to find out exactly how much this costs, because we may see a circumstance under divided government where we have to shut down the government in order to get what we need to secure the border, or to de-wokify these agencies. And if it
de-wokify, like, they really have a problem with diversity, equity, inclusion. Like, he might as well just say anyone who is not white, right? Like, am I wrong? Because I don't want to straw man him. But based on what he's saying, we can read between the lines, because I'm not making an equivocation like two things that are separate. Like when we looked up fallacy, right? Like, oh, you believe that, you know what I mean? Like I'm saying, based on his words and his context, it kind of sounds like that what he's saying, that because we are trying to focus, the Department of Labor had a hearing, training on, elements of the workplace. Like, now you want to get rid of the entire department. Why is this dude not in jail anyway? Like,
it comes to that, I at least want the American people to see the government that we are shutting down. Literally, people focusing more on pronouns than people, and whether or not one has gone into goddess mode effectively probably doesn't inform on whether or not they are an effective worker in our society.
Now, the interesting part is not once have they shown the actual person who's given the training. In trainings where you're bringing people to have a conversation, almost anything is allowed to be said. Now you set your ground when these type of trainings happen. You set the ground rules. Respect, other people when they're talking. Refrain from derogatory. Right? You go through. You have your ground rules, and so not once have they played anything that the training was really about. They're just trying to mock. From what my perspective is, they're just trying to mock these Black trans women. That's all I see. Because not once have they played anything about what the training is, and they're acting like they're exposing it, and they're willing to shut the government down and shut the Labor Department down, which represents all Americans. You see what I'm saying? Like, they would rather not have a Department of Labor if the Department of Labor is going to be about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Isn't that a problem? Is that not racist? Let me know what you think in the comments.
In our economy. I remember the Trump economy, where we had rising wages and success and actual labor that was prosperous. Now under Joe Biden, we just have a weird labor department. That seems like a bad trade.
Now, Matt,
a weird labor department. Now, what's interesting is I ain't heard not once from any of them bring up the fact that the Labor Department should be talking about higher wages for Americans. So even in them trying to diss the Labor Department, they're not like saying what the Labor Department should be doing, which I think is trash.
At some point, I think the Republicans, more than just you and a few others saying this, actually have to start saying, we're not spending any more money on this. Right now we could do that with the U.S. military, but there are too many establishment GOPers who would never touch a dime of military spending. But this is happening across every agency. That it's one of the reasons why we're not recruiting up to the goals that we need for each branch of the military, as we just discussed. So this has got.
So see, this is why I had to show this clip. And do you know that Fox News has over 12 billion views? I'm like, somebody needs to come to combat their stupidity and their straw man fallacies that they always use. Like, we already went over why the military is not meeting its accessions, and some of those reasons were the pandemic. And then I talked about my perception, it being that the racial disparities that even still happen in the military. And clearly, so Matt Gaetz was against diversity, equity, inclusion by saying the military is teaching critical race theory, which it's not. And now he's against any type of conversation that would make him, I guess, feel uncomfortable or less of a man, or Laura Ingraham less of a woman, if other people who are not like them are being included in the conversation. How can these people who say, like, they're saying that the Republicans need to do something, but guess what? Everything that's happening is legal. I thought they're the law and order party.
Got to be defunded across the board.
I do think we're going to have to bifurcate our analysis. There will be some
agencies, you don't even know how to spell that,
like the Department of Defense, that we have to keep around, and they will have to be de-wokeified. But there may be other
de-wokeified. Like, what does that even mean? So because the military is trying to do what it set out to do, which is have values, 7 of them that are the pillars of the Army, at least, and respect is one of them. Treat others with dignity and respect. That's an Army value. So he wants to de-wokeify. So he doesn't want military members to show each other respect. I'm confused.
Agencies where the rot is so deep, like at the Department of Education or the Department of Labor or at the EPA, where we really can't salvage a meaningful government mission for our people. And the question is whether or not the Republicans will endeavor to fight on that and to expose it and to actually use.
So he literally just said none of the government agencies are working, but not once has he said what the plan is other than de-wokeify and defund trainings, which are being used to help create environments free from discrimination and harassment, says the gentleman who allegedly was sex trafficking and under investigation and literally told on himself. And there's Apple receipts.
The power of the purse. Our friend Rand Paul is saying when the Democrats are in power, the Republicans are the conservative party. And when the Republicans are in power, there is no conservative party. That's why these primaries you're reporting on tonight are so important, because we need the backup to have a spine to stop this, to shut it down, and to actually make our government work for our people.
Yeah, the establishment keeps failing. We don't want to reelect them. Congressman, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
Wow.
Hey, click here to subscribe.
Like, they just said a whole lot of nothing. They just said a whole lot of nothing. But since I've been on speaking of saying a whole lot of nothing, since I've been hitting on Republicans, I want to show you this. It's funny. I want to show you this video that I watched because I want to let you know I got to show some love to the Democrats too. Because I just feel like politicians just don't know how to talk. They don't know how to talk. And it's just crazy. Like, how do you not know how to talk? Okay. Are y'all ready for this? Here we go.
Flockwood is already.
Sometimes nothing tastes better than a fresh tossed garden salad.
The strength of our nation has always been that despite the odds and the obstacles, we push to move forward, that we are guided by what we see that can be, unburdened by what has been.
Like, like, talk about a word salad. Okay, let's get back to Fox News and see what else they say.
In the New York Post argues this. Of course, Biden's policies are to blame for this migrant tragedy. Our border resembles what in the law is called an attractive nuisance, like a swimming pool without a fence. Biden's policies lure people here with promises that they'll be able to live here forever without any meaningful chance of deportation, if only they can make it past the border. Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor, former Republican.
It's so interesting. Obama deported a lot of so-called illegal immigrants. He did. So I wonder what proof they have about the border. You know what I'm saying? Like, what proof do you have?
Republican congressman from Utah is here to call this a closed border is a new level of insanity. It's much worse than Putin's price hike because people are dying because of our border policies.
Hey, can you imagine how horrific the scene must have been in there? The heat, the exhaustion. You have more.
So now he's gonna act like he cares about the people who, I don't know. Am I being cynical, y'all? He's gonna act like he cares about the immigrants.
53 people dead. It is totally preventable. The border is not closed. And for the White House spokesperson to say that they're focused on this, Joe Biden has never been to the border ever. Kamala Harris is supposedly the border czar. She has done absolutely nothing. Andrea.
Now, I will say this. Oh, they asked Lester Holt asked Kamala Harris if she had been to the border, and she totally lied to his face and laughed about it. Let me see if I can find that. Sometimes, do y'all feel like, you know, when you see videos online, sometimes then you can't find it? I think sometimes they take the videos down. Because sometimes it's just so embarrassing. I don't see it, so we'll keep going here.
And, the Secretary for Homeland Security is saying that the border is under operational control. That's a lie. It is absolutely, totally not. And that's not just me, Dagan, or somebody else making this comment. That's the Border Patrol themselves. How come these senior officials will not take the time to meet with people like Brandon Judd and the Border Patrol and talk to any one of the tens of thousands of agents that are trying to do this job? It is a magnet. It is drug trafficking. It is human trafficking. It is one of the greatest tragedies, and it's totally preventable.
As the Mark Lamb of Pinell County, Arizona, the sheriff there, said yesterday when we were talking about this horrific tragedy and the inhumane treatment of migrants who are just trying to get into the United States, he said, just Google U-Haul and migrant. And over and over and over again, there are story after story since Joe Biden took office of migrants, adults, and even unaccompanied children found crammed in small, unventilated vehicles.
It's interesting that they're saying this about the Biden administration, right? But immigration has been a problem. You know, maybe I should do a show about immigration. It's been a problem for a long time. Weren't there migrant caravans during President Trump's while he was in office? It's been a problem for a long time. It's not just Biden's problem.
Last June,
a border is not open if we're deporting people. Do they understand that? And then more people come from Europe they fly here and stay here than anyone else. Then people come across the border. So those statistics are there.
There were 33 migrants found in a U-Haul in 100-degree heat. And so they stand back and let this happen and let these traffickers, these drug traffickers and human traffickers, profit from human suffering and misery, whether it's fentanyl deaths or whether it's migrants dying in the back of a tractor trailer. They're standing back, lying, and letting it happen.
Yeah, you talk to the Border Patrol agents, they'll tell you that more than half of the women that are coming across and smuggled are being raped along the way. And how about the fentanyl? I mean, we just did stories about fentanyl and the drug trade that's coming across, killing Americans, I mean, by the hundreds.
So look, okay, the drug trade. And then, like, I mean, look at all the things that they're equating and just wrapping it all in at once. Like, these are issues that aren't necessarily all connected. You see what I'm saying? Like, if they really wanted to do something about immigration, they would. There's corporations like Bank of America and other corporations that hire people to work under the table. But they ain't gonna make no laws about that or make them pay any fines for hiring to, people under the table.
On a daily basis. This is totally preventable. And for the White House to pretend that they have an action plan, that they have it under control, that the border's closed, is just absolutely fiction and a lie. Why are we hitting all-time record highs? Numbers that are so big since we...
What's interesting to me is maybe the news doesn't, have to... these are people, these are talking heads. I forget where he works, right? But I think I've always seen him talking about the border stuff. Now, what I find interesting is... I probably got about 20 more minutes and then I'm going to get off. But what's interesting to me is how, like, they're not talking about the plan. They're not talking about the Republican plan to fix these issues. I mean, in America, how many mass shootings have we had? We've had more mass shootings than days. It's so interesting how people pick and choose what's important and what's not important based on their confirmation bias, based on their prejudice, based on their racist ideas, based on their lack of empathy. It's strange.
Ever started counting, It's because the Biden-Harris administration is tacitly responsible for this. They've attracted them. They told them they're not going to be deported. Live the American dream. Just get here, come here as fast as you can. And they've done so by the millions.
Border apprehensions at a new record, fentanyl seizures in 2 months. Enough.
Also, could it be the fact that, when it comes to economic policy, what people have, over in Mexico, what's the Mexican economy like? It's interesting that we never talk about, okay, what can we do to help people where they are so they don't have to come across the border? Obviously, them coming over here is still much more profitable for them. A lot of people from Venezuela and all that, they're escaping gangs and the drug lords and that kind of thing. So it's just interesting. Like, how can you, on one hand, act like you have sympathy or empathy for immigrants, but on the other hand, now you're talking sideways.
The same amount of fentanyl is being seized right now that they used to seize in a complete 12-month fiscal year. I want to move on to this. Critics are digging in after a newly released 2018 voicemail from President Biden to his son, Hunter, seems to prove that he was asking his son about his business dealings with China. Former DOJ prosecutor Jim Trust
got him. Look, the truth always comes out. That's the scripture. Since I haven't showed a scripture, where is that at? There is nothing hidden that shall not be revealed. That's Luke 8:17, and also Mark 4:22. Another scripture, whatever you do in the dark shall come to light. Same kind of concept. All these people be getting caught.
He called it an integrity test. Quote, will they walk away from powerful evidence? Will they come up with a soft plea like a tax charge, talking about justice that does not remotely capture the actual wrongdoing? Will they treat Hunter Biden like any other white-collar defendant in the federal system?
Of course not. Of course not. I don't think so, but I guess we shall see, huh?
Kentucky Congressman and House Oversight Committee member James Comer says Republicans are committed to getting answers.
I've got some bad news for the mainstream media and Democrat leaders in Washington. Joe Biden did have knowledge of Hunter's shady business dealings. He was involved. This is going to come out. If it doesn't come out.
Oh, yeah. And the voicemail, they got the voicemail now, so y'all can Google that.
Of anything that Merrick Garland or the Department of Justice does, I can assure the American people that there's going to be a hearing early on in a new Republican majority that's going to bring a lot of these concerns to light.
Jason?
It ain't like we don't know. It's so funny how, it ain't like we don't see the corruption on both sides.
Look, we know that the Bidens had been doing personal business in China, in Russia, in Ukraine, Mexico, Romania. You have pictures of Joe Biden.
What I would like to know is what politician isn't doing business. We need to repeal Citizens United and get money out of politics. So then maybe we can have people who will truly represent the American people.
With Hunter Biden's business partners on a golf course, at the residence there, the vice president's residence. You have emails, you have text messages. Now you have voicemails that you can listen to. How much more information do they need in order to justify this when the president of the United States?
And can't we say the same thing about Matt Gaetz? Can we get Matt Gaetz? Can we investigate him too? Why is he still a congressman?
States, and when he was a candidate of the United States, candidate for presidency, said, I've never even had a conversation with him. And when you had about his business dealings, but when you listen to that voicemail, it's obvious that they had a conversation before that. He was responding and telling Hunter, hey, I think you're in the clear.
I found it, among other things, odd that a son would save this voicemail from his dad, that Hunter Biden would save this voicemail. I know that he may be a reckless addict, but maybe a son keeping leverage over his own father. raising that question.
I don't know, but
Or maybe he knows his dad ain't all the way mentally there, like the rest of America.
we need a special prosecutor. That's what it's going to take.
Thank you, Jason. Jason Chaffetz.
And we need a special prosecutor for Matt Gaetz too, because it's time for him to face the music for his actions. Did y'all also see that, R. Kelly got 30 years today? And do you think that's enough for underage things that he did to young girls? And I forget all the things he got charges for, and I don't really want to look all that up. But yeah, you know what I want to do before I go? I definitely got to hit y'all with the scripture. Not many people read enough, so reading is fundamental, and I enjoy reading, and I enjoy reading out loud, even though I be stumbling over my words because it's late. It's 11:16 over here. Thank you for rocking with me on Twitch. So let's take it there. So what I have for you today, this was my meditation today. Psalm chapter 1. The way of the righteous and the wicked. Uh-oh. I guess I shouldn't have clicked that. Make it a little bit bigger for y'all. Okay. The way of the righteous and the wicked. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. The wicked are not so, but are like the chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Bam. I love reading. Something about reading the scripture feels like so complete. Like when you read it, it's like, that's complete. You get a blessing. Don't walk in the counsel of the wicked. You know what I'm saying? Speaking of the wicked, have y'all seen Kendrick Lamar? Did you see Kendrick Lamar? How he was basically, do you think he was mocking the Most High? In his performance where he had a crown of thorns on his head, iced out crown of thorns with diamonds made by Tiffany. Some people think, that it was demonic. His N95 video, I'm gonna have to do a video about Kendrick. His N95 video showed that he was like the Antichrist, the beast rising out of the sea. I thought that was interesting. I thought it was interesting how in his song he's saying, I'm not your savior, but you're dressed like Christ. I think it's the same way that people thought about the movie Noah. Remember the Hollywood movie Noah? Like people had the expectation that because it was about Noah in the Bible, that it would mirror the Bible. And a lot of people were upset when they went to see it, and it actually didn't mirror the Bible. So I think it's kind of interesting. What I will do is show you a picture. I'll do the show maybe tomorrow or this weekend. I'm gonna try to look for it. Kendrick Lamar. He was at Glastonbury. And I thought it was interesting because Kendrick Lamar went from, saying, here we go. He went from being a person. Why do we have to do all this stuff? Disagree. Kendrick Lamar performs women's rights chant on Glastonbury Festival closing night. We could read about it, and then I'll do a video about it. I've seen multiple people on YouTube do videos about it. Maybe I'll cover one of theirs and give my take on it. So he headlines the last night of Glastonbury, ending with the women's right chant. Right. That means women's rights chant in reference to U.S. abortion rights. So he wore, it's right here, a crown of thorns that's iced out, and he's been wearing it in Paris and stuff. And then he has blood coming down on his shirt, and he says something about Christ being the greatest. He says they judge you, they judge Christ. Like, it's weird because the way that I saw that is him equating himself to Christ, or equating us to Christ because of how he's dressed and the fact that he's saying, I'm not your savior. So wearing a diamond encrusted crown of thorns with blood pouring down his face, Lamar repeated, Godspeed for women's rights. They judge you, they judge Christ. Each time the rapper repeated the line, he would add more volume until he eventually stopped mid-sentence and threw the microphone before walking off stage. Lamar's chant was referring to the U.S. Supreme Court recent ruling that there shall no longer be a constitutional right to have an abortion in the United States, therefore overruling the nearly 50 years old Roe v. Wade case. Right? So in Lamar's headlining performance, he also mentioned themes of social justice, faith, greed, loyalty, and prejudice with his choreography, whilst performing tracks from his new album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. What I think is interesting in his N95 song, let me see. Kendrick Lamar, N95. In this video, right, he shows himself like walking on water here. Walking on water. And then also here, which reminds me of the book of Revelation. So he's floating above water, coming from like the sea, right? That reminds me of, and the beast from the sea. Revelation 13. This is what it reminded me of. The beast out of the sea. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed after the beast. People worshiped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshiped the beast and asked, who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it? All art comes from a spiritual place. This is what I believe. So when someone portrays themselves in such a way as if they are, Christ, I feel like it's a ritual. Y'all remember Nas did the same thing? Same thing right here. Carrying the cross. Like it's ultimate, it's like the ultimate blasphemy. Who else did this? Tupac with the Machiavelli. It's Tupac on the cross right here. Who else did it? Kanye West. I feel like it's some type of ritual. Kanye West, who calls himself Jesus. who really got his biggest start from producing a song for Jay-Z called Lucifer. He was a producer, but that really that was a song in which he got credit for, and which Jay-Z basically said, that everybody would be bamboozled by Kanye West. And he said something about really loving Jesus. Kanye West Rolling Stone cover. Another one. Why? And a lot of people believe this dude is a Christian. Like, how? Why? In his Kanye West. Let me show you. There's a lot of power in words. It's a lot of power in lyrics, right? In the song, Can't Tell Me Nothing, right? Here we go. He says, I need to zoom in somehow. He says, let up the suicide doors. This is my life, homie. You decide yours. I know that Jesus died for us, but I couldn't tell you who the disciples was. Now, when I hear it, when I heard this song, I thought I heard him say, but I couldn't tell you who decides wars. In other words, like he couldn't pick a side. But allegedly he said, I can't tell you who the disciples was. That's not what it sounds like to me in the song. So look, this is what he says. So I parallel double park sideways, old folks talking about back in my day. So the reason why it makes sense that he said, but I couldn't tell you who decide wars, this next line doesn't make sense at all, right? If he can't tell you who decides wars, like he's talking about, I can't decide if I want to be on the side of Christ or Satan's side. So he double parallel parked. So he's letting us know that he couldn't pick a side, that he wants fame and fortune and all of that. That's what I took that to mean. What do you think? That's what I think it means. So I think I done ran out of gas, as my mom would say, when I run out of things to talk about. I did find out how to get my streams to stay on Twitch. So now you'll be able to watch them, because I had to look it up because I noticed, my computer's about to die. I noticed that like my streams. Okay, how do I get this in? Uh-oh. Okay, it's plugged in now. I noticed that, none of my streams stayed online. So I had to look it up. You can find everything on YouTube. But I looked it up, and so now my streams will be on Twitch for a while, at least the 16 days, and then I did see how you can make them stay on there permanent. For my viewer on Twitch, let me know where you're watching from. How's it going? Good day, good evening, good night. Thank you for riding with me. Let me see. Let me know if there's anything that I should talk about or cover. And I appreciate you. I appreciate my followers. I appreciate anyone. Share the stream. Yeah, if you would. Give a like, share the stream. And I will catch you in the next one. Have a good night, or a good morning, or a good day. Peace out.